Hello, my name is Cheryl Chambers, a licensed clinical social worker, executive director at New Beginnings Family Services, and a doctor of social work candidate at Delaware State University. This podcast was created to help clinicians better understand the role of storytelling as a culturally affirming intervention when working with African American clients experiencing racial trauma, historical trauma, and co occurring disorders. Before clinicians can effectively use storytelling as a healing tool, we first have to understand the context in which many Black and Brown clients are living. Today's episode explores racial trauma and how it develops, how it shows up clinically, and how systemic experiences influence mental health, family function, and community well being. And I welcome my guest.
Hi, my name is Teray Sturgis, and I recently graduated with my master's in social work. And I am now here employed at New Beginnings and on track to get my license and become a licensed clinical social worker.
All right.
My name is Farah Washam. I am a licensed professional counselor of mental health, and I have worked with a wide variety of clients from different demographics and age ranges. So that's a little bit about me.
Welcome, welcome. So, today, what I really want to start this out with is getting a better understanding of what is racial trauma, what we know racial trauma to be. So can anyone, let's start that, right? I think when you think about racial trauma, what comes to mind?
Slavery.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's the first thing that comes to mind for me is being black, being a black woman in America. Slavery was the one of the first points of racial trauma for us. So that's the first thing that really pops in my mind. And that can go deep too, because there's so many things from slavery that have caused the racial and collective trauma for us as Black people. It's things that we don't even realize or correlate until years and years later. You know what I mean?
And you bring up something because it is collective. It's a shared experience. It's not something that is isolated. So when we talk about PTSD, when we talk about traumatic experiences, it may be just one individual having this experience in their journey, but we're talking collective. We're talking about it's not episodic. This spans time. There's some history behind it, and especially when we want to talk about racial trauma, we also talk about systems that have been put in place to continue the trauma, right?
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
this isn't an individual coming in and just saying that, you know, I was in a car accident, and now every time I ride by that road, I'm feeling some kind of way. This is, I was born in a system in which I feel that makes me, that with these traumatic experiences. One of the interesting things that I was reading about it is that just learning about the experiences from our family
Yes.
can, in it of itself, is racial exposes us to racial trauma, right? It perpetuates the trauma.
We brace for it.
Yeah.
We look for it. We expect it.
It was always interesting to me because growing up, you didn't hear a lot about it. Like people, they talked, but they only took you so far. So I would hear from my mom about the story of not, working at a diner, but only having to go in the back of the diner, right? It wasn't just till recent that my dad had this story of how he was riding. He was in Millsboro. He was riding down the road in a pickup with his dad, and he looked to the right, and there was a cross burning. And he said, I just remember guys with, people with white sheets, and he said, I couldn't have been no more than like 10. And I'm looking and asking my dad what was that? And his dad was like, never mind, just come on, they didn't talk about, because you were living it. I really think that when we talk about racial trauma, we talk about a system, a family system. We talk about collective. We talk about a community. We talked about a lived experience in which I could you when I say something, you all could relate,
Yeah.
right? And it spans generations,
Yes.
right? And we all in each one of us in our generation can go and relate, see some racism, and yeah.
Kind of like the conversation we were having a couple of weeks ago about the hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil.
Yes, yes. Yeah, that was really interesting because what we understand as African Americans, being associated with a monkey wasn't a good thing.
No.
Right?
No. No.
And so, that the whole awareness of racism brings its own trauma.
It does.
It keeps you on alert. And I know that we've got this culture out today talking about fatigue. Who's more fatigued than individuals who have to deal with that? And please, I want us to also expand this. Racial trauma does not just associate or is associated with African Americans and their lived experience.
Yes.
We have the indigenous population,
Yes.
right? We have black and brown, and let's be honest, we also have cultures. We have individuals, and I shared this before, where I had a young white man that was born in the inner cities of Baltimore, and in the racial trauma that he was exposed to from being white, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I think it creates, thank you. I think it creates a level of hypervigilance.
Yes.
And a heightened level of anxiety, that we experience living under racial bias. Any person experiencing it. Again, it's the microaggressions that we experience as well throughout our lifetime, right? That builds that level of hypervigilance and expectation that this is what to expect living in this society, unfortunately, to some degree.
And when you both said about the hypervigilance, or the conversation of it happened years ago, so get over it. If I still have to live in a constant state of hypervigilance, or the system that you're speaking of, how can you tell me to get over it? How can you tell me that it doesn't affect me?
But what's interesting is that we wouldn't tell that to a rape victim. We would not tell that to someone. We wouldn't tell people that we all as Americans, experience 9/11. We're not getting over that.
Yes.
That's something that we live with.
The Holocaust.
The Holocaust. We would definitely not tell people to get over the Holocaust, especially as the survivors of the Holocaust are dying out. That has endured generations. And so, yeah, that the get over, we don't get over. And we can't get over something that continues.
Exactly.
While you were talking, I was just about 9/11. We literally still have put measures in place as a country because of something that happened years ago. And we're still, you know what I mean? We're still putting measures in place as a country. They're going to war, they're creating whatever, guns and things that need to happen, and the security systems or whatever. So why are we doing that why can't we just get over it? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like you can relate that to the same thing.
Well,
Yeah,
but
that's a good
I think
example.
that is more about ownership and not having a proper response to what was done, right? And or the perpetuation of it, right? Like but for the sake of this, I really want us to sit in the fact that it is happening. Racial trauma is present,
Yes.
and it doesn't just happen to African Americans, but racial trauma happens to all races in one way or another. But what I do want to separate is that this isn't like PTSD. This isn't this is more of a chronic, repetitive experience in which it supersedes an individual. It goes to generations. And we see it because we see a system that has been put in place here in America that continue to show, because it wasn't that long ago that we couldn't vote.
Right.
And it wasn't that long ago that we couldn't own property.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't that long ago. So we're playing catch up to a system, right? And that in and of itself can be traumatizing.
Yes.
That in itself,
Mhm.
the oppressive nature
Mhm.
is a traumatic event.
Absolutely. Yes.
And that I can go to school with someone of a different race, but not have the same or equal opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
That I have to have that, 150% rule that I pass down to my kids. We know what the 150% rule is, right?
Yes.
Mm-mm.
Oh, at least I know.
I don't think I do.
The 150% or 120. We all,
Yes.
whatever it is, it's 101. But the ideal is that we have to do
Mhm.
150%
Yes.
more than our white counterparts. That we've got to be better. That we got to work harder,
Mhm.
and that we're not affording. And I ashamedly raised my kids under that perception that they have to work
Mhm.
harder, that they are the exception to the rule, that you cannot be and do the things as your white counterparts.
Mm-hmm. You said you're ashamed of that?
I am ashamed because
Mhm.
there was what we have done was put this level of pressure on you guys to a point that you got to always be on point.
Yes.
That you always got to be, you've got to keep working at the maximum level.
Mhm.
No, I mean, for me, if you really, I started thinking about that. It's like I'm not doing my kids any favors because I'm putting them back on the plantation.
Mhm.
I'm putting them back on there with the bale of hay to say that I don't care if you're 5 years old, but you need to pick some cotton
Mhm.
and you need to have 4 or 5 bales, right,
Yes.
by the end of the day.
Yes.
Instead of allowing my kid to just be that kid and let them know that you're just the same. But I was fearful
Mhm.
that if I did not teach that you had to work harder, that you may not succeed.
Mhm.
And so racial trauma can show up in parenting.
Yes, again.
It can
Yes.
show up on the sheer fear that I'm going to raise a child in this world who is not going to be equipped to be able to meet the standard.
Mhm.
That you're gonna see. I always used to say, I would tell my son Isaiah, I was like, you're the apple of my eye, right? Or the other ones, right? Like you're the apple of my eye, but I don't know what they're gonna see. They're gonna see, they may see you based off the color of your skin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But that's real.
It is real. But do we allow kids to be kids when we're teaching them about these realities? And why is it that my Isaiah, my Zion, my Jeremiah, or Kalela, how come they could not have the privilege of just being a kid?
I think what you're describing is a consequence of the racial discrimination and the climate that we're speaking about right now.
Yeah.
It does strip away a level of humanity and experience that children of black and brown descent, or even any children who actually encounter this, which they will in this society, it strips away that opportunity to just be authentic, to make mistakes, to be able to fall down,
Yeah.
right? And feel comfortable that the society that you're raised in will help you up.
Yeah.
And not judge you or stereotype you for making certain mistakes.
You're absolutely right. It does become the consequence. But when this shows up
Mhm.
in our therapy sessions,
Mhm.
when these types of mentality, when these types of thought processes show up,
Mhm.
are we as clinicians able to recognize that that is a result of not bad parenting,
Mhm.
not controlling parenting,
Yes.
right? Not domineering parenting,
Mhm.
but it's a result of racism.
Yeah.
It's a result of having to be
Yes.
told that we had to work harder, that
Mhm.
we're not going to be good enough, and we always have to do this comparative.
Yes.
And so we always have to over prepare our kids,
Mhm.
right?
So what do we do with that as clinicians, though? because you can recognize the reality of the parent, and then I don't know, and then what?
Well, I think it goes back to what we're here to talk about, right? So, racial trauma is real, right? Racial trauma is not, you cannot handle it like a one event. It's collective, and it is something that continues to go on because of the system that we continue to live in.
Yes.
The other part that we are going to talk about is this whole concept of cultural competence versus cultural responsive, culturally affirming, culturally safe environments. And so we have done an amazing job. NASW and the rest of them have done an amazing job at pushing out those CEUs and pushing out those cultural competent classes and courses. But I'm here to say and pose that it's not enough. Because to me, cultural competence says, can you be aware that there's a difference, right? But culturally responsive, culturally affirming, culturally safe says to me, can you now, once you recognize that there's a difference, can we begin to create a safe space for them to heal? Can we create a safe space for them to be, for individuals to be seen, to be heard, to be validated? And not necessarily see it as a maladaptive because it was survival.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right? Let us not see it. Let's not go and open up the DSM and be looking for diagnostic codes for, that controlling Black parent who is always pushing their kid and not allowing them to be that parent. I mean, to be that 5-year-old or 10-year-old.
Yeah.
But no, let's try to figure out the system in which they were raised.
Yeah.
You brought up a really good point, like when you were, you studying to be the therapist, what did cultural competence mean to you? And how did you respond to that?
So cultural competence was taught to me. It is the awareness, right?
Right.
But it's also, again, the answer to your question, what are you going to do with the awareness? And I think the question and the finger points back at yourself. It's your responsibility as the clinician to create that space. How you create that space is by constantly being aware of the biases that you hold, challenging them as an individual, and looking to grow through that. And being open with the client too, just to let them know where you are in your own process, in your own walk, so that they can meet you where you are too. So that's kind of how I was taught about cultural competence and how to apply it.
Right.
You can learn a lot from your clients through firsthand information, right? And it's the duty to understand them. So through that walk, bless you, you can learn a lot.
Right.
And it does also boost your overall competency in different cultures and your rapport with the client and your trust to do some of the work because they know that you're in it with them and you're looking to understand from their perspective, which is very important.
You brought up something off mic, so we got to bring it back in, right? Okay. Which is, what if they
can somebody who didn't, a clinician, who didn't grow up how I grew up, didn't experience what I experienced, isn't my race, can they do that? Can they be culturally competent, or can they relate to me? Is it possible? Right? And like I said earlier, I feel like as a Black person, I'm able to connect with many different people because and y'all brought up a good point that we've had
we had to we were the individuals that had to understand the people in which we worked with, right? We were in the homes, right? We took care of the kids, right? We were out there 24/7 understanding this population in which we were working with, that we were enslaved, right? Like we know where they are. And we had to also not only know, but a lot of their understanding was, or their ways were kind of, was seen as the okay, I wasn't going to say push, but yeah, it was supposed to be the civilized way.
Yeah, it's the standard.
the standard,
Mhm.
which took us to, you brought up
Yeah, code switching.
yeah.
We've had to code switch in order to get by, in order to have food on your table and to stay at a job. We've had to learn how to code switch and be that what's that lizard, the iguana, the chameleon. They be the chameleon in the room and be able to fit in different spaces. And I actually say that to people all the time, that I pride myself on the fact that I can do that. But now thinking about this conversation, it's like,
You
wow.
that was
Yeah.
ingrained in you.
Yeah.
It was born out of survival.
It
Literally.
was. It was. And not only that, come on, if you have you ever your parents told, don't put your hands in your keep your hands in your pocket.
Yeah.
Look people in
Yep.
the eye,
Yep. You go in the
right?
store, get a receipt.
Yes.
All the
Yes,
things.
ma'am. No, ma'am. Right? All of that was survival, right? Ignore, walk away from ignorance, right? Like it was a lot of things that we had to learn, and because we had to understand the culture in which was coming against us. Know thy enemy, right? Like you had to know what you were up against and how to handle that.
Yeah. And to watch. Like, I can't tell you how many times my mom, she's good for that. Make sure you watch. Don't be the loudest person in the room, because you just never know who's kind of plotting against you in that way. So we had to learn how to like be that fly on the wall and fit in.
My grandma would say, act like you've been somewhere, act like you've been parented, act like you've been taught. And so, and it even came down to on travel days when we would go somewhere, we would dress up because you're gonna look like you've been somebody. You're gonna look like you're somebody, right?
Wow.
I didn't even know until I was looking at or listening to the Green Book. Somebody was talking about how we would travel. African Americans would travel at night. I thought that was just when it was less traffic, right? Like I just thought that was the
Yes.
quickest way to get there.
Travel,
Like
in general,
yeah, well, like if you were going on a trip, on a long trip, you would travel at night.
Yes.
You would travel at night, and a lot of times they would travel at night because during the day you're less, at night you can't really look in the windows and you're less likely to get stopped or harassed.
Yes.
Driving during the day
Yes.
cause some problems. Driving while black, right?
Yep.
So we had to learn a lot of these things. So
Yeah.
I think we there's a part of us, like you said, out of survival, we know how to be culturally in tune.
Yeah, now I'm wondering in this conversation, like a few things came up for me, right? Which was this level of fear that's associated in operating like this, and a level of performance, which is extremely exhausting.
Oh yeah.
So I want to even call into the conversation too, because I've been hearing a lot about the level of fatigue people
Yes.
are feeling. And I'm wondering if it's this level of performance at its peak, in which a lot of us are very scared to stop the performance, because then what are people going to think?
And is my life now going to
Am I in danger?
that too, but also the trajectory of my life. If I stop performing, am I going to get the opportunities that I was getting before?
I I'm sure she would not mind. I have a dear friend that I went to Wesley College with, and we graduated the same time. My white counterpart, I always call her my she's a dear friend of mine, but we could have these real conversations, and she talked we were able to have conversations about, she acknowledged white privilege, right? She was one of the first people that we could have that conversation, and she recognized that she benefited off the white privilege. And one of the things that we used to talk about was, here I went on to pursue my master's. She was like, no, I'm good, right? I could not think of just settling at my
Yes.
master's, right? And she's living this very simple life. And I love it for her. I really do. But some way, somehow, I could not see, I didn't see that as being possible for me.
It didn't feel,
Living
yeah,
in within a certain means. Because
yeah.
let's be honest, me living in, if I took her road, I would have been making less,
Mm-hmm.
right? I wouldn't have been able to rent the home that she rented, right? I wouldn't have been able to take care of my responsibilities. And that's where the privilege came in.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And so I had to keep pushing just to equal out to where she was at,
Mm-hmm.
to have somewhat of a similar life, to where I could sit back sometimes after working sometimes 80 hours a week, to sit back and be able to relax and say, okay, I'm good.
Yeah, to achieve that level of
150%.
rest. Yeah, that's a very interesting story that you shared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought about the flip side of that when we first began this part of the conversation. I have a friend who recently just left a job, took the pay cut for peace of mind. But that I feel like that was unheard of before. Maybe now, you know what I mean. Now we're becoming becoming wiser and saying that I can't let this thing
Yeah.
have
Mm-hmm.
I can't let this the rat race
Yeah.
affect my mental health.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, right. And I love that. And I love that for you guys because I don't, I'm still struggling. Here I am, in my 50s. I'm still struggling at letting go and being okay with slowing down. Running this practice is no easy feat, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it is a lot. And there's been a lot of times that I have struggled with, I just want to walk away from it.
Mm-hmm.
But the fear of being perceived as a failure,
Mm-hmm.
not being perceived as being lazy or
Mm-hmm.
messing. So it's all these narratives
Mm-hmm.
that are tied to my identity.
Mm-hmm.
And I am not that.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I am more than just, this individual who created this practice.
Yes.
But I somewhere along the line that has become a part of it had become a part of my identity. I'm trying to push away from it now because I feel like that person, right? Like I'll take I'll slow down a little bit to kind of take
Live
a
my
little bit
life.
of the
Yeah.
yes,
Live my life.
Yeah.
because there's a sacrifice.
Yes,
My
it
kids
is.
sacrifice
Mm-hmm.
the fact of not having mom around because working, and yeah, I might not have been the mom that was working as a housekeeper here and then leaving there and working as a cook, right? I'm that educated one who's still working 80 hours
Yeah.
and still out here not being there for my kids
Mm-hmm.
because the mindset did not change.
Mm-hmm.
And how can I let the how do I help, how do I work at getting that mindset to change when the reality is, and statistics already show it,
Mm-hmm.
that just walking in on off the cuff as a black woman, I'm going to make less than my white counterpart.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm definitely going to make less than the white man.
Right.
What do I do with that? So my mind says I got to work harder,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Or do we accept less, a lesser experience? Or are we associating us by, not taking the next opportunity as a lesser experience? Is it truly that? Or is that what we're perceiving it as?
You know what and that's a hard one, but I will tell you what I did do when I decided to open up New Beginnings
Mm-hmm.
is that I created my own table. I
Mm-hmm.
created my table and my seat,
Mm-hmm.
right? And bringing other individuals on, I just built a bigger table
Mm-hmm.
and added more seats.
Mm-hmm.
Because what I know is that if you weren't going to do right by me, at least have worked myself to a place to where I can at least try my best to do right by me and right by others.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I'm grateful. I'm thankful that I was able to build my own space,
Mm-hmm.
and create that safe space. But, it gets to a place where it's like, okay, to what extent. And
Mm-hmm.
that's when I had to lean on Rebecca, or I had to lean on to Ray or
Mm-hmm.
Corey, or and the others that I bring in. Is like, okay, I wouldn't. It's not going to just be a
Mm-hmm.
me. You know, when they first came on, it was like, oh no, I'm not. We're here together.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be calling me your boss. We're here. We're going to work together, because the ideal was, I want you to own this.
Yes.
I want you to own your seat. I want you to own. And if your table's not big enough, here's the space to build your table.
So what you're talking about is community, shared experiences, which I think is very powerful, and also coming together on this collective experience that you're talking about right now.
Yes.
And moving forward in this is sharing the experience, opening it up, letting other people know, hey, this is a real thing, right? And how do we address it? We address it by perhaps coming together, right? Creating more opportunities where we can rest and still excel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
At least that's what I was hearing.
No, and you're definitely right. So this is what's interesting to me. Let me throw this out to you. So when we talk about, because I'm on this thing about cultural competence, I'm
Yes.
just feeling like it was that thing that we threw out there that says, "Hey, we addressed it."
Yeah.
Right. And let's look good at, we're looking good, and we're appropriate because we're meeting everyone's needs, right?
Yes.
So, cultural competence, the
Mm-hmm.
primary focus is knowing and understanding, acquiring a toolkit of different. As we close this first conversation, I hope we're walking away with a deeper understanding that racial trauma is far more than a single event or isolated experience. It is often collective, chronic, and deeply woven into historical, cultural, and systemic realities that shape the lives of many Black and Brown individuals and communities. Today, we explored how racial trauma can influence parenting, identity. Today, we have explored how racial trauma can influence parenting, identity, work, education, healthcare, relationships, and even the way people learn to survive. We've challenged ourselves to look beyond behaviors and symptoms and instead ask a different question. What happened, and what context shaped that person's response? As clinicians, our first responsibility is to recognize that every symptom exists within a story. When we understand the historical and cultural context in which the story developed, we become less likely to mistake survival for pathology and more prepared to provide truly trauma informed care.